What's going on, guys? I'm your host Joss. Welcome back to Top 10 Beyond the Screen. Stick around to the end so you don't miss out on the common features and blooper reel, and come say hi to us on social media. You can find our links down below. I know that death can be a pretty upsetting topic, but today we are going to talk about near-death experiences that all have a happy ending. Luckily, I have never had a near-death experience, but if you have, feel free to tell me down in the comments. I would personally love to hear. In the meantime, let's check out today's list of top 10 celebrities you didn't know almost passed away, but thankfully did not. Starting off the list, number 10 is 50 Cent. The rapper turned 41 years old this year and is counting his blessings for making it this far after he almost died back in 2000. He was living in Queens, New York at the time, and he was sitting in a friend's car when another car pulled up next to him, firing off 9 shots with a 9mm handgun. All 9 of them connected with the rapper, and he was shot in the hand, arm, hip, both legs, chest, and left cheek. He told the story during an interview and said, "It happened so fast that you don't even get a chance to shoot back. I was scared the whole time. I was looking in the rearview mirror like, oh shit, somebody shot me in the face, it burns." The shot in his cheek left him with a permanently swollen tongue and a slur in his voice, which luckily just adds to his unique rapping voice. His doctor has come forward and said that his voice sounds the way it does because there's a fragment of a bullet lodged on the inside of his mouth. Apparently he decided to leave it there because it would have done more damage to remove it. How crazy is that? He spent 13 days in the hospital before being sent home to recover. It's literally a miracle that he's still alive and not even paralyzed. Moving on to number 9, we got Kanye West. The rapper has made headlines for a bunch of different reasons throughout his career, but one of them stood out the most after he got into a bad car accident back in 2002. At the time, he was still an up-and-coming artist, but the near-fatal accident impacted his entire career. It was just 2 weeks after he signed a deal with Rockefeller Records. He was driving home one night after working late at a recording studio in California. Apparently, he fell asleep at the wheel and crashed his car into an oncoming vehicle. The driver of the other car broke both of his legs, and Kanye shattered his jaw. That is actually what inspired his hit single titled "Through the Jaw," because he recorded it with his mouth still wired shut. But the near-death experience helped shape him into the artist he is now. He recalled the accident and said, "To nearly lose your life, to nearly lose your mouth, your voice, your whole face as a rapper, and I had to be on TV. My face looks crazy to me now, but I have to just thank God for the situation that I am in." Looking at him now, you would have never known that this ever happened. He physically healed up just fine. Emotionally though, he says that he still struggles with it sometimes. In our number 8 spot is Selena Gomez. She shared her beautiful story with us earlier this year in March after she had a kidney transplant. Selena got the terrifying news that she needed to get a new kidney due to her lupus, and her best friend Francia Reza stepped up to the plate and offered one of hers because it was a match. They both went through the operation at the same time, and each experienced serious complications throughout it that almost took their lives. Francia spoke about her recovery and said it was incredibly hard, scary, and painful. Selena thought she was on the road to recovery when she first woke up from her surgery, but turns out only a few hours later she had to have another one. Her kidney was very active post-surgery, and when it turned, it broke an artery. She was rushed back into an emergency surgery to get a vein from her leg and use it to build a new artery in order to hold her new kidney in place. The doctors told her that she literally could have died. Thankfully, both ladies are healed up and healthy again. Selena was just left with 2 scars, one on her leg and one on her abdomen, and she shared them with her fans to remain open and honest with them. Plus, she knew that the paparazzi would be all over that. Sliding into our number 7 spot is Leonardo DiCaprio. The actor has had 2 near-life death experiences, and I personally didn't know about either of them, although I like to pretend I know him sometimes. He's opened up about his horrific experiences, and the first one was when he was almost eaten by a shark. He was shark diving in South Africa and was in a cage that is supposed to protect you from the great white sharks while the employees feed it tuna and you basically just watch it eat. But a big wave came and somehow flipped the cage, and the shark landed with half of his body inside of it. Leo said that he had to lay flat at the bottom of the cage while the shark snapped like 5 or 6 times just an arm's length away from him. Luckily for him, they were able to get the cage back to normal and pull it out of the water. His second near-fatal experience was on a skydiving trip. Basically, every skydiver's nightmare came true for him, and his chute was too tangled to open properly. His diving partner even tried to open the second one safely, but it was tangled too. Somehow, they ended up managing to get it opened in mid-air, but they were going so fast by that point that they almost broke their legs on the landing. They didn't break their legs, but they did get pretty banged up, so what I take from this is never go shark diving or skydiving. And at number 6 is Travis Barker. The Blink-182 drummer almost died when he was involved in a plane crash back in 2008. The crash left him with 65% of his body covered in severe burns, and he said that the recovery was so bad he offered his friends $1 million to take his life. He was not making a joke about it either. He told ABC News that the doctors had to take away his cell phone because he was actually making calls offering to deposit the money into their bank if they would agree to end his life. He was on a jet home to California from Colombia back in September of 2008 when the plane crashed and killed 4 people, including the 2 pilots, Travis's bodyguard, and his personal assistant. He recalled the incident and said, "I opened a door and my hands caught fire. I ran to get out of the plane, but I fell through a wing. I immediately soaked up with jet fuel and caught fire, and then I was on fire, running like hell." After the horrific accident, he spent 4 months in burn centers and underwent 27 surgeries. He talked about his crash and his recovery journey in detail in his memoir, Can I Say? I wonder if that is why his whole body is covered in tattoos. Like, do you think it's to hide the scars? Because I didn't even know he had scars. It's crazy. Halfway through list, number 5 is Emilia Clarke. The British actress is mainly known for starring on the hit TV series Game of Thrones. Fans were left in shock after it was announced that she almost died from a stroke after the show's first season. Turns out she suffered from 2 brain aneurysms. The first one caused symptoms that sent her to the hospital where she had to go to immediate surgery. The surgery revealed a second aneurysm which grew and then required more surgery. Emilia has opened up about it since and said that the surgeries and recovery had her feeling like she wasn't going to survive it. It all came out of nowhere too. She said she was working out at a gym in North London when she just got a headache and then ended up fainting in the gym bathroom. Apparently she was violently puking and said somehow she just knew that her brain wasn't working properly. The doctors told her that she suffered from a subarachnoid hemorrhage, hopefully I said that right, which is a life-threatening type of stroke that causes your brain to bleed. So basically some really serious stuff. She did continue to film the show though, but admits that it still affects her every day. During an interview she said, "Every minute of every day I thought I was going to die. I can only imagine how scary that would be." Poor girl. Here we are at number 4 with Tracy Morgan. The actor and comedian was almost killed back in 2014 when he got into a horrible car accident on the way back from a show. He wasn't driving at the time, he was riding in a limousine bus when a Walmart truck hit them on the New Jersey Turnpike. Talk about a lawsuit for Walmart. The crash spiraled and ended up in a 6-car accident, killing one of his best friends and collaborator, comedian James McNair. Morgan was lucky to survive the crash but was left with several broken bones and was put into a coma for 2 weeks. He broke every bone in his face, had broken ribs, destroyed his femur, and had traumatic brain injury. When he first woke up from his coma, he was blind for a week and then other injuries and damages started to surface. The comedian, who is normally spending his time making people laugh, admitted that during his recovery time, he contemplated suicide. After being in a wheelchair for some time, he did make a return to stand-up comedy, which he says was a lifesaver. In his 2017 Netflix special, he found a way to make a joke about the accident and says that comedy helps him through everything. He said, I quote, "When anything ever bad happened to me, I made it funny and I turned it good. This was a bad thing that happened to me. I wanted to tell my story, but I also want to continue my stand-up career because all the great things that ever happened to me in my life came through stand-up." This list makes me happy, not because they went through something horrible, but because they all have a positive outcome from it. It's kind of like a miracle. Everyone on this list is a miracle. In the 3rd spot on our list is Dylan O'Brien. The young actor is praised for his work in Maze Runner, not only for his talent, but also for the fact that he came back to finish filming after he had a near-fatal accident. It happened while he was filming the 3rd and final chapter of the movie series Maze Runner: The Death Cure. The filming took place in Vancouver, BC and ended only 3 days after they started because while shooting, Dylan was severely injured. He was performing a stunt on a moving truck when he had a harness malfunction and a moving truck yanked him into the path of another moving vehicle. The 24-year-old at the time suffered suffered from a facial fracture, some deep wounds, and a concussion. But his condition got worse as the weeks went on and they had to cancel production. He thought that he was gonna lose his life. Thankfully though, a year later, once he was fully recovered, he actually went back to finish filming, and they had to refilm the exact same scene that the accident happened in, and he agreed to do the stunt all over again. He spoke about it and said, "It was incredibly difficult. I'd always known that that was going to be a piece of it. I'd always known that that was going to be not fun for me and a challenge. Just getting back to set, putting the clothes back on, getting back to the movie, there was a lot of eeriness to it." The brave actor said he doesn't regret anything and says that he is just thankful that he was able to finish the series. Taking over the number 2 spot is Eminem. He's always been very open about his past and many people probably feel like they know a lot about him. His movie 8 Mile showed us a bit of his life before he became a famous rapper and the struggles that he faced living in poverty. But people have been surprised to learn that he was hospitalized back in 2007 after he overdosed on meth. He spoke about the experience with Rolling Stone and said, "My doctor told me the amount of methadone I'd taken was equivalent to shooting up 4 bags of heroin. Even when they told me I almost died, it didn't click." He wrote a song about it titled "A Rose," which was on his Revival album. He recalled the vivid details of his hospitalization and says he has regrets to his family and children who stood beside his hospital bed as he was basically drifting towards death. His lyrics said, "Nurses lean over the bed, pulling tubes out, then the sheet over my head shut the room down." Good news is, he survived the tragic incident and was able to continue blessing his fans with his incredible music. Sniping the number 1 spot is the hilarious Kevin Hart. The actor and comedian was recently in an accident that almost left him paralyzed or even worse, dead. The car accident took place on September 1st of this year on a California highway. Jared Black, a friend of Kevin's, was driving his 1970 Plymouth Barracuda at the time with his fiancée Rebecca in the car with them. He turned south on Cold Canyon Road and lost control of the car. The car rolled off the road completely. Jared and Rebecca were actually trapped inside the car, but Kevin was able to make it out and crawl to a nearby residence to get help for them. All 3 of them suffered from traumatic injuries but are all still alive and recovering. Kevin suffered major back injuries that left him practically paralyzed for weeks. He spent a week in the hospital and then had to attend a rehabilitation facility where he underwent weeks of physical therapy. The actor made it clear that he had no anger towards Jared and wished both of them a safe recovery, and it was determined that he was not under any kind of influence at the time of the accident. Kevin recently had his first interview appearance since the accident on the Ellen DeGeneres show, and of course, he joked about the whole thing and said that the worst part about the entire accident was not being able to wipe his own ass. Classic Kevin Hart. Death is something that comes for everyone at some point in our lives. It's something that we can't ultimately escape from. And that goes for the world of the rich and famous too. But I promise this list is not going to be as morbid as it sounds, because there are times where people have a near-death experience and are able to walk away from it and tell the tale. We're going to check out some of these stories right now on Beyond the Screen. I'm your host Joss. Come say hi to us outside of YouTube. You can find our social media links down below. And if you're new here, we do common features and a blooper reel at the end of every video, so make sure you stick around for that. But let's get right into our part 2 list of celebrities you didn't know almost passed away. Starting us off at number 10 is Chad Michael Murray. He was only 15 years old when he faced a life-threatening situation that almost ended with him on his deathbed. He's been open about his story and explains that his intestines twisted and doctors didn't realize that he had been bleeding internally. They actually told him that his football figure is what almost cost him his life. He said, I quote, "Basically, my abs kept it flat so the doctors couldn't tell that I was bleeding. I almost died. They had a priest at the end of my bed. I remember it was the only time I ever saw my dad cry. It was actually a nurse named Sandy who made the right move and saved his life one night. She was the one who noticed what was happening and ended up giving him 4 units of blood, which was actually the life-changing move. They were able to get everything back to normal again, and the actor said that he would actually bring chocolates to Sandy every year until she moved away to a different hospital. Thank God he is alive, because could you imagine life without One Tree Hill? He was like one of my first celebrity crushes, that boy. Up next, number 9 is Amy Schumer. Turns out that the comedian and surfing don't mix well together. Her near-death experience happened when she was in high school and got involved in a surfing accident during one of her practices. She told Vanity Fair about the story and even showed off the big scar that she was left with on her leg. She needed a total of 41 stitches and had 3 different layers of them after her surfboard fin went into her leg and she had to yank it out. This kind of makes me a little bit sick. The worst part was that she was by herself practicing her moves that day, and because it was the winter season, the beach was empty for the most part, so no one was really around to help her. She explained the story and said that she managed to limp her way back to shore and ended up finding a man that she asked for help. An ambulance eventually came, and once she realized she wasn't going to die, she said that she feared losing her leg and having to do speeches at high schools to motivate people. Like, that was her biggest concern. Only Amy Schumer would almost die but be concerned about giving speeches at a high school. What a gal. Sliding to the number 8 spot is Zac Efron. This story happened recently when he was rushed to the hospital just a few days before Christmas 2019. He came close to death after he contracted a life-threatening bacterial infection while filming in Papua New Guinea. He was immediately flown to Brisbane on a life-or-death flight with the assistance of medical professionals who thought that he wasn't going to make it. At first they thought it was some form of typhoid or similar infection, but it was actually much more serious than that. Luckily, his body was able to fight it off at the hospital, and he was able to finish the rest of his trip out there. He was there filming his new documentary called Killing Zac Efron. It's actually a new adventure series that follows him as he ventures deep into the jungles and goes on like these crazy dangerous exhibitions. He filmed for 21 days and was able to complete filming before he was eventually cleared by doctors to fly home to the US, and he made it just in time on Christmas Eve. Close call, but he made it. In the number 7 spot is Orlando Bloom. Back in 2011, the actor opened up about his near-death experience during an interview with Men's Health magazine. It happened when he was 21 years old and was acting like most reckless young boys do at that age. He was climbing a rooftop terrace with his friends, and in order to bypass a locked door, they had to like shimmy onto the roof that was between 2 buildings. But the worst thing imaginable happened, and he fell. He broke his back on the fall in multiple places, and doctors told him that he may never walk again. He was hospitalized immediately and had to undergo surgery where they put plates and screws in his spine. He also had to go through physiotherapy rehab where he eventually learned how to walk again. But he has admitted to being completely paralyzed for the first 4 days after the accident. How terrifying. Thankfully, in less than 18 months, he was riding on the back of a horse in New Zealand filming Lord of the Rings. Talk about a miracle. We almost never met Legolas. Moving on to number 6 is Sarah Silverman. The comedian is known for her controversial sense of humor and her sarcastic tone, but one Facebook post did not have her fans laughing. Back in 2016, she revealed that she was lucky to be alive after she suffered from a case of epiglottitis. It's a condition where the small cartilage structure in your throat that covers the windpipe swells. In Sarah's case, hers was so swollen that it resulted in a blockage of the airflow going into her lungs, which is obviously life-threatening. In her Facebook post, she wrote that she went to the doctors thinking it was just a sore throat, but they informed her that she had a rare condition which is normally just seen in children. She was in the intensive care unit for 5 days and said that she owes her life to the doctors, nurses, and technicians that technically saved her life. Halfway through the list, number 5 is Liam Hemsworth, another handsome devil on our list that stared death in the face but won the staring contest. The actor was born and raised in Australia, so we would kind of just expect him to know how to surf, but he almost died one time while surfing as a kid after he got trapped underwater. Oh, baby, I would save you. I save you. He told the story and explained that one time his leg rope wrapped around his whole body while he was underwater and he couldn't get back up to the surface. He was actually only in waist deep water, but the way he was trapped, he couldn't stand up or bring his face to the surface to breathe. He almost drowned, but thankfully he did live to tell the tale, and apparently that is not the last time he almost drowned while surfing, yet it doesn't seem to stop him from hitting those waves again. But he is Australian, so it kind of makes sense. It's like in their blood. Here we are at number 4 with Gerard Butler. Speaking of surfing, apparently no one on our list has a positive experience with it, so it looks like I will not be trying it anytime soon. The actor was on set for Chasing Mavericks in California when he had his terrifying experience with surfing. He ended up getting pulled underwater and dragged across a reef filled with rocks. Ouch. Luckily, he was rescued by one of the safety patrolmen and was taken to the hospital immediately. When the story first went public, people didn't know how serious it really was, but he says that it was as serious as it sounded. He spoke about the story and said, I quote, "This was maybe one of the few times that the reports were not exaggerated. It was a pretty close call. The waves just took me and I couldn't get up." Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna keep surfing on my bucket list after this. Does not sound like a good time. And with my luck, I won't make it up. Cruising into number 3 is George Clooney. While filming one of his torture scenes in the movie Syriana, he fell and cracked his head open, which resulted in an injury so bad that he almost died. And when he didn't, he was in so much pain that he admits to wanting to take his own life. He was in the hospital for weeks, and doctors noticed that fluid was leaking from his spine, making his injury even worse than they first expected. He had a 2.5-inch tear in the middle of his back and a 1/2-inch tear in his neck. It was a long road to recovery for the actor, who still says that he isn't 100% ever since then. He still has pain in his back, and he suffers from horrible headaches, which he describes as, I quote, "headaches where it feels like you're having a stroke." He might think twice next time about using a stunt double for his fighting scenes. However, we are glad that he's okay, and I appreciate his dedication to his scene. That is some serious dedication there, George. Damn. Taking over our number 2 spot is Rachel Bilson. The OC actress was involved in a head-on collision when she was just 14 years old and says that luckily she doesn't remember the details of the crash. She was driving down the Pacific Highway in California with a group of friends when the accident happened. The collision was so bad that she actually had to be cut out of the car, and she ended up in a coma for 3 days. At one point, the doctors said that they didn't know if she was going to wake up. She spoke with InStyle about the crash and said, "I was in a coma for 3 days, but I don't remember the accident. I had a head injury, so I sort of blacked out. But people said it would come back to me, but you know, I am hoping it never will." Thankfully, she did heal up just fine after she woke up from her coma and still has no memory of it. So fingers crossed that it stays that way, because that would be mortifying to remember that. In our number 1 spot is Owen Wilson. On different occasions, we've seen actors struggle with mental health to a point where they end their own life. It's always a hard thing to digest because we're so used to seeing them smile, crack jokes, and just make other people laugh for a living. Owen Wilson once attempted suicide back in 2007, and many people never even knew about it. It made headlines that he was found in a Santa Monica home where he had slashed his wrists in an apparent suicide attempt. He was rushed to the hospital and later went on to the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center to receive help. The day after the incident made headlines, the actor issued a statement saying, "I respectfully ask that the media allow me to receive care and heal in private during this difficult time." Thankfully, he did go down the road to recovery and has continued his career as an actor. I personally never even heard this story, so I think it is important to bring light that some celebrities do struggle too, and it is okay to admit that you need time to heal and get better. So it's not the happiest number 1 spot on this list, but it does have a happy ending. I don't know why, but you guys really like hearing about celebrity near-death experiences. Probably because they all have a happy ending and they've all lived on to tell the tale. So for a 3rd time, I'm gonna do another top 10 countdown list of celebs you didn't know almost passed away. Thanks for coming back to Beyond the Screen. I am your girl Joss Bedard. If you're looking for the BTS team outside of YouTube, you can find our social media links down below. And don't miss out on the bloopers and comment features at the end of every video. They are always a lot of fun. But without further ado, let's get started. Beginning the countdown list, number 10 is Johnny Depp. He decided to commit to his role of Tonto in the 2013 action movie The Lone Ranger, which meant that he learned all of his own horseback riding stunts. He might regret this decision now because he got into an accident on set that had him moments from death. While filming one of the horseback riding scenes, his saddle slipped. He grabbed onto the horse's mane, which caused it to go basically berserk, and Depp fell in front of the horse. Apparently the horse's hooves just missed his head by like a few inches. One can only imagine what kind of damage a horse could do by landing on your face. Luckily, he did survive with minor wounds and continued filming after a hospital cleared him too. Coming in next, number 9 is Ellie Goulding. The singer opened up about her near-death experience on her Instagram back in 2016. She was on a trip in Norway and almost died when she and her friend Connor McDonald drove over a frozen lake. That never seems like a good idea to me. I have way too many trust issues to be driving on ice. But their worst nightmare came true and the car went through the ice. They had to escape the car through the roof before it completely submerged in the water. Luckily, they were both okay and Ellie was able to make a joke about it with her followers, saying, "Note to self, don't drive a BV206 over a frozen lake." Don't drive anything over a frozen lake. Just a thought. Up next, number 8 is Stephen King. In June 2019, the iconic author recalled the accident that almost ended his life 20 years earlier. He escaped death on June 19, 1999 when he was walking near his home in Maine and got struck by a minivan. He suffered from a variety of serious injuries which had him in the hospital for a month. The doctors were debating if they should amputate his right leg, but decided against it in hopes that it would heal properly. He ended up pulling through, but the pain was so bad afterwards that he announced that he was actually retiring from writing. Thankfully for us, that plan didn't stick and he was able to walk away fully recovered. I cannot imagine a world of horror movies without the King. Here we are at number 7, and we got Jason Statham. The actor escaped death while filming The Expendables 3. Another stunt scene gone wrong, but he did live to tell the tale. The accident happened when he jumped out of a truck during one of the action scenes and everything went terribly wrong. What happened was he was driving a 3-ton truck and the brakes went out and it plunged 60 feet into the Black Sea. Luckily, he used to compete as a professional diver for England, so he knew how to handle the situation. His co-star Sylvester Stallone spoke about it during an interview and said that if it was anyone else in the truck, they would have been dead, because they were all wearing heavy boots and gun belts in the scene and they basically would have drowned. Jason used his Olympic quality diving skills and was able to get out of the truck and swim to safety. That's like a nightmare. A car crash and drowning all in one. Sliding into number 6 is Kate Winslet. We could probably all agree and say that her most iconic movie was Titanic, when she took on the legendary role of Rose. But she has since revealed that during the filming process she almost died. She described it as the worst experience and said that while her and Leonardo DiCaprio were running away from a rushing wave in one scene, her coat got caught on something and she was pulled and trapped underneath the water. The actress called the whole filming process an ordeal and suffered from a chipped bone and heavy bruising after her near drowning experience. She also got really sick with the influenza virus at one point, so good thing that it was all worth it and the movie was insanely successful, because I ain't drowning for nobody. Halfway through at number 5 is Tom Cruise. Some have said that the most entertaining part of the Mission Impossible franchise is that Tom Cruise has complete disregard for his own personal safety. He does all of his own stunts, and let's be honest, he has done some pretty crazy stuff. But in the 6th movie of the series, he faced a few injuries and also a near-death experience. He broke his leg during a high free-fall jump but continued production despite the fact of that, and he almost died during the closing scene when he dangled from a real helicopter and had to fall off in midair and catch himself on an object hanging below.
Rebecca and I could see Tom dangling from this helicopter. Tom fell.
I actually thought he fell, and I heard myself scream.
The entire crew said they gasped and screamed because he actually fell and it looked like he had broken his back on the impact. They all admit in the video that they thought he was dead. Now, I know he gets a lot of hate on the internet, but we have to give him credit when credit is due. It is pretty badass that he does these stunts by himself. Sniping the number 4 spot on our list is Isla Fisher. Back in 2013, the actress shared the story of how she almost drowned on the set of her upcoming movie, Now You See Me. Like Tom Cruise, she decided to do her own stunts in the movie, and one of them had her simulating a magic trick that had her locked inside a water tank. She was filming the scene and her release chain got stuck on her costume and she was stuck underwater for 3 minutes. The worst part was, she was trying to signal to the crew that she was drowning, but they thought that she was just acting out the struggle in the scene. So they weren't helping her, they were applauding her for her incredible acting, but she was actually drowning. What a nightmare. Luckily, she was able to get out when they finally realized that she was drowning. Moving on to the 3rd spot on our countdown, we got Harrison Ford. One of the biggest names in Hollywood almost lost his life while filming Star Wars: The Force Awakens back in 2014. They were filming in London, and during one of the scenes he was knocked to the ground and crushed by the door of the Millennium Falcon. He was hit hard in the pelvis and got pinned to the floor. He had to be airlifted to a hospital in Oxford. He actually had to leave production for 2 months as one of his legs had broken in 2 spots and his ankle was dislocated. It was later announced that the health and safety executive in Great Britain would be suing production. They ended up pleading guilty to 2 breaches under the health and safety legislation. His injury did delay production, but he did continue to film when he was fully recovered. In our number 2 spot is Jamie Alexander. The actress took on the role of Lady Sif in Marvel's Thor movies, which just so happens to be the thing that almost cost her her life. She was in the hospital with serious injuries after experiencing a near-death experience on set one day. It didn't have anything to do with the filming or a stunt gone wrong. She was just walking on set one day and fell off something really high, as she describes it. When she hit the ground, she knew something was wrong because she couldn't move. Turns out she herniated a disc in her spine, dislocated her left shoulder, tore her right rhomboid, and chipped 11 of her vertebrae. Recovery was brutal. She was paralyzed in her right leg and right hand and had to learn how to use them once swelling went down. After she completed physical rehab though, she was able to continue on. We've made it to number 1 and we have Gary Busey. The actor still suffers from his near-death experience, which he claims led him to seeing heaven. Like for real. On December 4th, 1988, he crashed his motorcycle into a highway guardrail and split his skull open because he was not wearing a helmet. Lesson learned, kids! Wear a helmet. He was sent into immediate surgery for brain damage, and the doctor who did 2 hours of neurosurgery repair says that Gary died on the operating table. The actor recalled it and said, "I saw angels, and they don't look like what they look like on Christmas cards. They're big balls of light that float and carry nothing but love and warmth." He actually had to learn how to walk, talk, eat, and dress himself all over again, and still suffers from brain damage to this day.